Welcome to MarcusG.tv. I am Chef Marcus Giuliano, and I'm a chef on a mission. Go ahead.
So, Chef Marcus,
I like to talk a lot.
today we are going to be talking about the politics of purchasing food.
Yes.
Very important topic, and it's one that I think a lot of chefs should listen to, and people that are out buying, and I would probably say 100% of the people in the world buy, or in the United States,
Yes.
buy something at some time. So, Marcus, why do you avoid the big companies that are out there?
We avoid the big companies here at Aroma Thyme, and in our really trying our personal life, but it's just so difficult and such a challenge. But as a general rule, we will go above and beyond to not support a big giant conglomerate. When people talk about local food, small businesses, I feel it's a scam. I feel it's a downright scam to say, okay, let's support a local business, and walk into a local business, and everything at local business is from China and big corporations, and it has no value to the community besides the few jobs it's created, which, don't get me wrong, I'd rather do that than support a big multi-conglomerate box store with everything that's still made from China. But I feel that there needs to be better options for going into a locally owned store. When you go into a locally owned store, I want to be able to have more locally owned options and independent options. So that's really the premise of what we do here at Aroma Thyme. So we try to avoid all the big companies. It's virtually impossible. We do everything we can to go out of our way to support the small, independent, privately held companies. And basically, if a company is publicly held, which means it has shares and has stockholders, these board of directors answer to the higher power of money. They don't answer to ethics, morals. They don't answer to the environment. They answer to shareholders. That's why people invest in companies. They want a return. You're not going to invest in a company, all of a sudden when your stock's not performing, you're not going to accept an answer of, well, gee, we took care of the environment this year, and we paid everybody more wages, and we stopped buying stuff from China, and now we have all American-made stuff. You'd fire your stockbroker. You'd get rid of that stock if that was a company's, beliefs and values. No, they are after the money. Wherever the money is, that's where they go and get it, and they disrespect everything else in its way. So what these companies do is they buy other smaller companies. Happened in town here. They bought a small local company, a big company, and they lose jobs. So for example, this is part of the whole Walmart theory or problem with Walmart coming into communities. These big companies have figured out where they minimize the labor, and they can do much more of the work with less people. So a company here in town that sold a few years ago, they took 5, 6, 7 employees, and they now do it in the factory, in the parent company's home factory, with one employee in a half a day, what it took 5 to 7 people to do all week long at the small little processing plant here in Ellenville. So why would I want to give my money to a massive conglomerate that gobbles up smaller companies and then takes away jobs from small communities? I don't feel that's right. In most big companies, that's what they do. And it doesn't matter. They're after, it's about the money, the money, the money, the money. And I've seen it happen time and time and time again. Does that make sense, Jamie?
It sure does. Absolutely. What are some of the other big conglomerate, publicly owned corporations that you try to stay away from?
Well, whether they're privately or publicly, like let's say, for example, like Bacardi. Bacardi is a privately held family company, but they are such a massive conglomerate, okay? They're huge, that I'd rather give my money to a smaller independent rum company. Does that make sense to everybody? To a smaller rum company than supporting this massive company? I'd rather give a new distiller a shot. I'd rather give a smaller distillery the money. I'd rather be able to call up a distillery and speak to the owner of the distillery. That to me is business to business. That's how you do business. That's how business was always done until we got greedy and kept upsizing and upsizing and upsizing. So whether it's a company that's privately or publicly held, you really have to analyze and say, well, where's the money really going? let's follow the money trail. What is the values of the company? Because don't get me wrong, there might be some phenomenal publicly held companies out there that do respect everything, that are on the right track, but those aren't really the norm. So whether you look at, a beer, like beers that come from like Guinness. Everybody loves Guinness. Oh, I love Guinness. I love Guinness. Guinness is part of Diageo. Diageo is a massive spirit conglomerate that does not play fair, and I refuse to give them money. But in the same hand, Diageo owns 150 brands of booze, and it's really hard for the average restaurant to conduct business without serving Guinness, without serving Moet Chandon, without serving Dom Perignon, without serving Johnny Walker, Tanqueray, Captain Morgan's, Myers, Ciroc, Smirnoff. I mean, the list goes on and on. So how do you actually eliminate companies like this is a challenge. That's why I say it's not a perfect system, but I'm going to be honest, I've eliminated all of Diageo products. I've eliminated a lot of these big conglomerates. So a friend of mine the other day texted me and goes, Marcus, you have to try this wine that this restaurant has. They finally have good wine. Text me the picture of it, and I said, this is a big, massive conglomerate brand that now has a smaller, clicky label that's bought from a big conglomerate distributor. And I was like, that's not really wine to me. That's like buying a label of something that has no real core foundation in it. It's just a big company that slaps a label onto some extra juice, or bought some wine from another company, or had it in their realm of their producing power, and threw a label on it. And goes through a big, massive. So it's like going into Walmart and buying craft products. Too massive. And I was like, that's not the way. I don't care how good the wine is. I don't care how cheap the wine is. I'm not going to serve that wine here at my restaurant. That's the end of the story. It's not going to happen. I'd rather support a small vineyard, a small producer, be able to have dialogue all around and know that, hey, here's the full story on my wines. In fact, on our wine list, Jamie, and our beer list, our wine list, we have an asterisk next to all the wineries that we've actually been on the vineyard or have personally met the proprietors or the winemaker face to face. And people love the fact that we've done all of that research. I could never do that with that big brand that my friend texts me. That wouldn't happen. There's no personal relations there. Does that make sense?
It sure does. What about local? Is local enough?
Local is a phenomenal start, but let's put it this way, there's no lemons here in New York ever. There's no oranges. There's a lot of things like champagne and cognac, and so I have to buy ketchup still. There's no local ketchup. I have to buy tomatoes, other than the summertime, the tomatoes are not local. So it's how do you take advantage of all the local things when they're either in season or they're available, like whether there's a local paper, we use a local paper company. So using the year-round staples, using the seasonal stuff, but then when you analyze things, a lot of people just go up and say, okay, I'm just going to buy salt. I'm just going to buy sugar. Well, I'm just going to buy Domino's sugar. I mean, you spend all this time resourcing your local purchasing power, then you just throw it out the window when it comes to Domino's sugar and some type of salt and oil, and you just throw it all out the window, and it's just like, you put up a facade to people. You put up like what's called greenwashing. People, all these restaurants tout how local they are, and they just do the bare minimum to get by. And if they don't want any extra thought process, so it's like, well, how do we buy a truly independently owned sugar? Now, we're in a very fortunate situation because we buy palm sugar, and we know the actual owner and producer of the palm sugar. She's been to the restaurant to eat here. So it's a great situation when you can do those kind of things. And it costs a lot more money, but it's really how business should be done. And the thing about all these things costing much more money, things that cost much more money are typically the real cost of the product to begin with. But because of big companies, conglomerates, downsizing other companies, gobbling them up, laying people off, and putting it through a massive distribution channel and consolidating everything, the cost has deflated. So it's not really, you're not really paying the real cost of something when you buy from these conglomerates to begin with. So that bottle of wine that my friend was like, oh, this is a great bottle of wine. Well, no, there's no small independent winery that could have made that quality, that good of a tasting wine at that price and gotten it distributed. It's just virtually impossible because they've mainstreamed everything. It's like, I learned when I was out west that the distribution networks of trucking things cost so much more. It was just as expensive to truck a pallet of food, because I would do a lot of direct buying in Colorado. It's almost as expensive to truck a pallet of food across Colorado state than to ship it from Colorado to New York, because the distribution networks are already set. It wasn't much more, but it was a little more money to ship farther, because once you get into the core of distribution, and especially into New York, the channels are already, the built-in economies and channels are already there. It's like opening up a restaurant for brunch and being able to offer brunch every single Sunday at a set price versus a restaurant where you go to that never does brunch and say, I want to book a party here and I want you to do a brunch for me. Well, now they're not used to doing brunch, so it's not the economy that they're in, so they have to charge more for it than somebody whose wheels are greased in doing it. And these big companies, big conglomerates, they have very greased wheels, and they're used to doing repetition on a mass scale.
So Marcus, if you can't do local and you have to buy other products, which you were talking about, tomato sauces and sugars and things like that, what do you believe in, and where and what should you buy? Maybe give us an example, pick one product.
Like we're in a pickle right now with tomatoes. We've been using Muir Glen tomatoes for the longest time, canned organic tomatoes. It's an great organic tomato, phenomenal product, American made. But Muir Glen is part of General Mills, and General Mills is a massive conglomerate. So we've been trying to get away, so we switched to another company called Woodstock Farms, which has an organic canned tomato. And it's just so difficult to you think you're buying something that's organic and pure and wholesome, just to find out you're giving your money to like Pepsi or to Coke or to General Mills or to ConAgra. Because a lot of these, like I said, a lot of these companies have gobbled up smaller companies, where the only thing why these companies like Muir Glen survive is because they had a phenomenal reputation to begin with. And they're just riding on the power of their reputation. And a lot of these companies just, like I said, downsize them, rip them apart, penny pinch everywhere, just like what happened with Anheuser-Busch and InBev. InBev took over Anheuser-Busch. It was a hostile takeover. The new CEO of InBev, when they took over Anheuser-Busch, shaved $1 billion off of expenses the first year taking over Budweiser. $1 billion. That hurt a lot of people. Sure, they took away bonuses, they took away cell phones, they took away travel expenses, they took away a lot. But what really affected it was they went out and started now really consciously bidding where they bought their products from, like their rice and their beechwood. You know how they say Budweiser's beechwood aged? That their beechwood supplier to Budweiser for years upon years actually went out of business, and they lost lots of jobs in that community because Budweiser now outsourced. So that's how they save the money, but they still charge the consumer for they still charge the same price. Isn't that funny? So to Wall Street again, InBev, Budweiser looks phenomenal. But to the guy who lost his whole beechwood business, and the guy who lost the rice business, and the guy who lost all those businesses that were lost, it's an atrocity. But people still keep giving their money to Budweiser. They keep supporting Budweiser. Budweiser has over 200 brands, including Lef, Stella Artois, Rolsch, Kirin, Rolling Rock, Goose Island now. So the list goes on, and people still keep supporting this like they're blind, and like, no, this is why we're in the situation where we're in, because these companies do not care on how they make their money. They're going to make money. That's the bottom line. So how do you walk into a Walmart, a Sam's Club, a big box store? And it's tough to walk into these stores to begin with, a big sporting goods store, and make a difference. And you want to try to buy as much local as you can. You want to go into an independent store, which is locally owned, and have a conversation with the owner of the store. I do all of my baseball gloves, my sneakers, all of our sporting goods. We try to go to independent small stores where when I go there, I know the owner, and the owner can come visit me in my restaurant and patronize me. When I walk into Walmart, which I don't, I were to walk into some of these big stores, the owners would never come patronize me. These big, massive distributing companies like Cisco and U.S. Food Service, they would never come support me. Sure, the salesman might come in, and that's great, but the core principles of the company would never, ever, ever support me, and I could never talk to them on the phone. And I feel bad. And am I forced into buying from some of these companies? I am, because that's just the way it's set up. But again, I'm extremely conscious of every dollar I spend.
So how can the average person
or restaurateur?
Restaurateur, be able to make these informed decisions? Not everybody has the amount of time that you have to go and research. So how can the average person...
You have to find a knowledgeable salesperson or a knowledgeable store that you can speak to the owner and say, you know what, I like these New Balance sneakers, but does New Balance have an American brand? And if it's a good store, he'll be able to tell you, and that's exactly what's happened with me. Yes, New Balance makes these American shoes, and here's the price of them. Would you like them? So you need to be able to go into a store that is extremely knowledgeable about things like that. And every time you go in, ask for American. You know, simple math here. American union job in the garment industry is $29 an hour. Indonesia's 14 cents an hour. China's 55 cents an hour. The stuff's gonna cost more mostly, but when you can buy American, you're making a massive, massive difference. You're employing people at a living wage here in America. You're not supporting some poverty-stricken employees in China, in a sweatshop, or Indonesia, or in these women. It's the horror stories. It's a horror to be able to know where your money is going. People talk about karma. Yeah, follow the money trail to see where it goes. So you have to do research on your own, and you have to ask questions and really sort of demand things from stores and from shop owners. This is what I'm looking for. If you don't have it, there's somebody else that has it.
So can you talk a little bit about fair labor, fair trade?
Well, we roll right into that point of the labor in these other countries. You know, fair, and it goes beyond the garment industry. It goes in chocolate, it goes in coffee, it goes in tea, it goes in any kind of mass farm industrial thing from other countries. Fair labor is extremely important. So you have all these restaurants touting, we serve local food, we serve local food. Well, where's your chocolate from? You know, the little 10-year-old boys slave out in the fields making your chocolate? Yes, they did. See, that's where the point is that these restaurants don't do enough. They buy what they can, they put up the facade, they put up the greenwashing, they say what they can, but then everything else is just a total blur to them, and they could care less. Now, not all restaurants are like that. A lot of restaurants are now becoming more aware because consumers are becoming more aware because of me making videos like this and other people making videos and more internet articles. They're becoming aware of this. But for the most part, they just push all this stuff off. So fair labor, fair trade, anytime you can support an organization that the farmers get more money is a good thing. Now, of course, there's problems with the fair trade certification and other certifications, just as there are with other organizations. But the bottom line is, let's get more money to the producers and the farmers and to the independents. That's the bottom line.
So, real quick, can you tell me how you explain this to your customers?
This is, yes.
And what we tell our staff.
This is the part where when a customer comes in and they want Absolute vodka, or they want Ciroc vodka, or Grey Goose, and I'm sorry, we don't have that. You have to explain why you don't have it. You have to give the positive benefits. We support independent companies. We support, we know where our dollar goes. We support small distributors, small vendors, small distillers, small craft brewers that Marcus knows or that we know personally, that we have a relationship with. We feel because we are a small business, it's very important to support other small businesses. And I'm sorry, but Ciroc vodka is part of a massive conglomerate that we don't feel represents our core values here at our business. When you say stuff like that, it goes a long way, and a lot of customers understand. So what do we have to tell our staff? Well, you have to train, 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 and train. Whatever business you're in, training is key. You cannot put your staff on the battlefield without giving them ammunition. So if my staff couldn't explain why we don't have Grey Goose to a customer, they'd be a little upset. But if once our guests, our associates now know and can explain to our guests the full story, every single customer except one or two in the last 10 years has appreciated what we're doing and the extra steps we take to support small business to small business commerce. It goes a long way, and people respect it and they understand it, but your staff has to be well prepared to explain it.
Well, that is wonderful, Marcus, and thank you for sharing all of that wonderful information.
And this video was made to go in our book.
Yes.
So it's going to be transcribed and in print someday, and of course edited. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, like it, pass it along, subscribe please, and thank you very much for watching.